Back again with the most recent viewing of Kiki's delivery service. I'm not in public, so the most recent viewing of Kiki's delivery service. One of the defining examples as to why critically acclaimed Japanese director Hayao Miyazaki is not a particularly great animator or a great storyteller. This movie is a complete farce and is everything I just can't stand about him as a director. There might be like worse Miyazaki movies. I was watching this and kind of thinking that like The Wind Rises is worse, Spirited Away is worse, because like at least as well not have my earphones in. What am I doing? Like I was thinking that Kiki's at least consistent like throughout the entire thing. It's the same kind of meandering, just fetishization of daily life that is so prominent in Miyazaki's works. But in Kiki, like, it's reasonably well presented. The art style is great. I was thinking about this, watching this. The film works if you don't think about the actual plot. If you don't think anything about, like, how they set things up or the character building or, like, just the way everything plays out, because if you don't think about it as a movie, you can kind of appreciate the visuals, the design, the characters, individual moments that like feel like they could have worked in a better movie. But what it essentially amounts to is that when you actually pay attention to it, like when you actually start thinking about like the characters and the direction and where things are going, like it just doesn't do enough, doesn't flesh out the characters enough, doesn't make them interesting, it doesn't make you feel attached to any of them other than Kiki herself. And the thing about Kiki is that if you know anything about Miyazaki, yes, like there's a reason she gets so much focus in this movie, other than being the protagonist. But when you take into consideration like what any of the other characters are like, when you think about like when you think about their storylines, what's going on with them, their personalities, their backgrounds, like they do so little. They don't really have much of an impact at all. And it just makes you feel as if like everything the film tries to do just completely flounders in its face. It's just it's just not a very good production. Let's see. The thing I was thinking about when watching this was just how like it's trying to recreate like daily life of people, all right? Like this idea that this witch is moving to a new place and doing all these things, making these radical changes in her life. It's trying to do that, but it just completely fails at making it interesting or compelling in any way. There's too many cars about. I just keep getting distracted. the setup just the thing that really dawned on me when I was watching it when I watched it in the theater is just how the entire film is carried by like the cat. If you really think about it, if you're in a theater and you're like interacting with people, like, watching these, the only time you see any enthusiasm about what's happening is when the cat is on screen, right? The cat is the only good thing about this movie. He's like, he has a couple of good lines. He's kind of funny. He's like an interesting like contrast to Kiki. But like, what do? Halfway through, they take the best character and they don't let him talk for the entire rest of the thing. About halfway through, he just stops talking. Like, he has sex, and then he just stops. So like the movie just loses all of its momentum after that point, because there's no real momentum, there's no real like plot, there's just, all you're doing in the second half of the movie is just revisiting characters that you saw in the first half, and it doesn't have any real impact because none of them really do anything, they're just people that exist like in a vacuum with like no real personality, with nothing to really show for them, or no real relationship with Kiki at all, outside of this idea that like, oh, I want to be accepted. Oh, I want to fit in. Oh, I want to be popular. It just completely, it doesn't really amount to anything. It's an overly idealized view of what life is like. And that's kind of my criticism of Miyazaki as a whole. He's just like the weird idyllic nature of this film, where like no real problems exist. There was no World War I or II, right? The only real, the problems that come up in the movie aren't really problems at all. And like half of them are like Kiki's fault, like losing the toy, not knowing how to fly, like she causes like a car accident at the beginning and then like just walks away like nothing happened. It's like, what a bitch. It's just like, she's so, the movie tries really hard to kind of put her on this kind of pedestal, right? To try to act like she's like this really likable, sweet person who's making friends and forging all these relationships. But it all comes off as really shallow and just really forced and just really fake, Like, it's crazy if you think about like the chronology of this movie, how like she comes to the city, right? And she's just like, oh, I'm so excited. And then she spends like maybe 12 hours being depressed that she doesn't know anybody and that she doesn't know where to go or what to do. And then like she meets Asano and the bakery, and like then she starts like the delivery service. It all just, she has no initiative. Like everything that happens just kind of happens. There's no like real thought put into it. It's, excuse me.
Although I don't know. That's her opinion.
There's no real thought put into it. There's just this feeling that it's just like everything works out. And that's kind of like the message of the movie, is that like, oh, you don't have problems, bro. Just wait a bit, do nothing, and your problems will just go away. And then they do. Like, I find it really interesting, like, how the movie tried to like tie together its central theme. Like, oh man, being a witch is like painting. Painting? You mean like artwork? Which is kind of like animation, which is kind of like what Miyazaki does. So like, he's trying to compare himself to this witch. Like, unbelievable. And like the movie's like core conflict of like Kiki just being like, oh man, like flying was fun, until I had to start doing it as a living. And I'm just like, first of all, you've been doing it for like, what, a couple of weeks? And second of all, this comes completely out of nowhere, right? There's no real like build up to it. It doesn't feel organic or natural. It just seems kind of forced. This idea that she's in like this depressive spiral for no reason, right? Really because she thought someone was mean to her when she wasn't. It's like, huh? It's just downright ridiculous. It really is. So essentially the entire movie, like, nothing really happens. Kiki leaves home, and then, like, starts her own business, and that's it. You know? Like, there's no effort put into it. There's no thought. She doesn't really struggle. It's like, what was the point of all this, right? And they try to, like, give it some half-ass climax at the end. Like, oh, no, Tomba's in trouble, but it's just a way to like cap off a movie that just had no possible way of really ending. Because like if it ended where it probably should have, you know, when she got that cake, you know, like there was no point to it. None. So like instead like, oh well, at least she saved her friend's life, but okay, but it's like you probably should never have been in that situation to begin with. It's just I don't know. I detest this movie. I really do. Like, to me, I feel like this kind of, like, idealization of being young and meeting new people is, like, downright disgusting because real people don't act like this. You know, real people aren't going to be like, oh, I'm going to give you a place to live because I have an extra room. You know, I'm not going to charge you anything. I'm going to help you start your business. Like, nobody does that. You know, like, I know nobody does that because I'm going through that now. I've been doing that for a decade. You know, like, nobody cares. They want you to fail. So for me, like, Kiki is just like, it's so devoid of like any actual humanity to it that like its attempts at like capturing daily life just completely fall flat. You know, this idea that like someone would want to make friends with you, like, no, like just like here goes. The idea that people would like want to be around you, like just because you're different or special, and that like, oh, they found a kindred spirit in you. It's like, it doesn't happen. You know, nobody cares. And that's where Kiki falls flat, is that it doesn't understand that people don't care about you outside of like what you can provide for them. That is the movie's major failing, is that it just doesn't have any real humanity to it. It's just too idealized. Let's see. I don't know. I think that's all I really wanted to say about the movie. This was kind of an impromptu thing. I'm just like, oh, I don't want to go home and talk about the movie, do our movie review before I fire up like a gameplay stream. So, but yeah, like it just isn't good, you know. There are very few like Miyazaki films that I like, and this is not one of them. This is this is like the go-to example of just everything wrong with the slice of life genre, everything wrong with Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, right? We really should be celebrating better artists than this. And why exactly are Americans so fixated on like Ghibli? You know, I go down to that theater and it's like packed. You know, like again, they're only showing like one screening, but like, so but like it's pretty bad. There's like people everywhere, and I was kind of thinking about this. You know, despite how like objectively terrible this movie is, it's still better than what we get in America. It's like, I guess this is the reason Ghibli and like anime has taken off, is that like, you know, as much as I don't like this movie, as much as I don't appreciate it or respect it at all, like it's better than what Americans are making. It's better than what Disney is doing, right? Like it's not even really close. So I guess there's a reason this film has an audience. But yeah, like we really do have to move past the Miyazaki thing. We really do have to start talking about like other better creators. We do need to start talking about like other Japanese animators that like have far surpassed Miyazaki in every way, shape, and form. It's just like, why are we so obsessed with this guy? You know, like what about him is so remarkable other than like his reputation? Like when you really think about it, like nothing. It's just nothing happens in this movie. Thank you for watching. How do I end the stream?